Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In part 6 of our conversation with Dr. Jonathan Stapley, we're going to talk about baby blessings. Now, you may be a little bit surprised about that, since those ordinances aren't considered salvific in the Mormon Church. However, Jonathan said it was his favorite chapter. Why is that? Check out our conversation. Let's talk a little bit about baby blessings. You said that was your favorite chapter.
It's fun.
Yeah. So tell us, why that was your favorite chapter.
Well, there's just so much really interesting material that I think is totally beyond the memory of most Latter-day Saints. And you'd think that it's not a salvific ritual, it's not required for salvation. And so, one might not suspect that it has such a large influence or may not have much descriptive power as a lens to look at Mormonism, but it's really, really rich. So going back to the Articles and Covenants, that's the revelation Joseph Smith delivers when the church is organized. It has ecclesiastical offices, and again, deacon, teacher, priest, elder. It also has liturgy. So there are core liturgy of the church that's revealed along with the creeds at the beginning of it, right? So you have your creeds, ecclesiology, and liturgy. In the liturgical sections, we have baptism. Actually, I should say we have ordination, baptism, confirmation, the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Okay, all core things. Every Christian is like, baby blessings. What? And Joseph Smith, this revelation was kind of a recapitulation of a revelation Oliver Cowdery wrote a year earlier and governed believers in New York in 1829. And Oliver Cowdery is clearly taking from the Book of Mormon. All the offices, except in his, there's no deacon because there's no deacon in the Book of Mormon. And there's no baby blessing because there's no official baby blessing ritual in the Book of Mormon. But Joseph Smith is not constrained by the Book of Mormon. He takes deacon from the Bible. And I'm not really quite sure where he gets baby blessing from.
Oh, well, because then there he talked a little bit about the 8 days after birth.
Right. So, but that's like every aspect of the liturgy that's revealed in the Articles and Covenants. It just says, baptism, and here's a prayer, mind you. Ordination, here's a prayer. But baby blessing just says, do it. Doesn't really say how, where. It says, take it to the elders of the church. The elders of the church will do this baby blessing. And we don't have a lot of baby blessing documentation for the first couple of years of the church. We just have a couple. But the earliest baby blessings we have indicate that babies were blessed on the 8th day. And then later we see that, it kind of functions as a naming ritual. For the most part. Now there's exceptions to this, because oftentimes children are much older, they're not neonates. But we see this 8th day blessing, which is not explained, but most aspects of the liturgy aren't explained because it's transmitted orally and by proximate example. That's how we learn to do things in the early church. So 8 days, why 8 days? Well, it's evocative of circumcision. Joseph Smith's New Testament Old Testament revision includes this kind of extended discussion of circumcision at 8 days being evocative of 8 years old, of accountability, of age of 8. And so it's quite possible that this 8th day blessing was to commemorate that sort of Abrahamic circumcision ritual. Not that they were using it to circumcise the children, but kind of evocative of this. But it's clear, I think what's most interesting to me is that in Zion, so Zion is Missouri, there's this exchange of letters between Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery and Whitmer in Zion. Whitmer's the Lord's clerk. He has a book of remembrance. Book of remembrance is the book that Adam creates. And so he has this sacred document in which he is to inscribe the inheritance of Zion. And if you come to Zion, you receive an inheritance. That is your inheritance for time and eternity. While the earth shall stand, and in eternity when it's renewed. And when babies are blessed, their name is written in the book of remembrance, and they receive this inheritance. They're essentially brought into this salvific community, where salvation is no longer an individual affair, but it's not really an individual affair in Mormonism ever, but this explicitly communal salvation in Zion. It's just really remarkable. And that, as Zion essentially fails, the Zion Project burns, and the saints move to Illinois, and we have the Nauvoo Temple liturgy and the cosmological priesthood that reorders the world and universe of Latter-day Saints. We see the baby blessing becoming an annunciation of children's sealed position in the cosmological priesthood. So the Woodruffs, Phoebe takes her baby Wilford and Phoebe have been sealed. Phoebe takes her baby, holds it. Wilford gives the baby a blessing and essentially says, you're part of the priesthood that will extend out forever, the order of heaven. And so it's an annunciation, if you will, of the child's sealed position. There's all these dynamics. This tradition of eighth-day blessing persists into the 20th century. At the same time, John Taylor, for example, is kind of a Joseph Smith fundamentalist. So when Brigham Young dies, John Taylor essentially tries to cull away Brigham Young's more extravagant teachings and focus on, Joseph Smith's revelations and texts and teachings. And so they go back to the Articles and Covenants, and it's clear that it's the elders of the church that bless the baby. So you're supposed to bring the baby to church. If you want to give your child an eighth-day blessing, that's fine. But you still need to bring the baby to church because that's the order of the church. So there's a de facto two-blessing policy that begins in the 1880s and persists until Joseph F. Smith's tenure, through Joseph F. Smith's tenure. What's interesting is there's this shift in the 20th century with the rise of a new priesthood cosmology, described in chapter 1, where the new monogamous priesthood father becomes entangled with the ecclesiastical priesthood office. And so it becomes the duty of a father now, not the bishop or the elders of the church to bless the baby, but that's the dad's job. And the way the church talks about this duty throughout the 20th century is extremely father-focused, so much so that we are willing to let non-member dads or dads that are not ordained to participate in the blessing circle, because it's performative of a dad's duty, and we want so much for fathers to feel that power that we have them participate in the baby blessings up until, I think, 89.
Well, wasn't that just recently where they said that if you're not worthy of a temple recommend, you're not supposed to participate in those sort of things?
Well, except, so this is a really fascinating piece of the tradition. So all of the liturgies of the church now are required, or they require temple recommend for someone to participate in administering the ritual, except if a dad doesn't have major sin. So when this policy came out, Boyd K. Packer, Elder Packer, got up and said, here's the rule, but we want dads to participate. And maybe if the dad isn't, I imagine he was thinking about maybe smokes or drinks or maybe not a full tithe payer, It says, serious sin. I suspect, if he was a murderer or something, we would have a different conversation. But we are willing to let fathers, baptize and participate in ordination circles and baby blessings that don't hold the temple recommend, that don't meet the threshold of worthiness that is essentially required for everybody else to participate. Because we want, it's the same priesthood fatherhood entanglement, that we want them to perform that duty, and in perhaps performing it be quickened by the power of the moment, and perhaps repent and be better, not only better dads, but better Mormons.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, the two things that come to mind. But, let me make sure I'm understanding that. Are you saying that that's still the current policy?
That is currently the policy.
For baby blessings?
Yeah.
Not for baptisms?
Yeah, for baptisms. Yeah, for sure. So that was a 2010 change, and the handbook has not changed since then.
Oh, because I was under the impression that if they didn't hold a temple recommended, they weren't supposed to. Is that just for Melchizedek priesthood ordinances then? And
for Melchizedek priesthood ordination is excluded. But baptism, baby blessings,
but they cannot confirm.
They can't confirm, I believe.
If they don't have a temple recommend, they cannot confirm.
But they can participate in the circle.
Okay. And of course, if they're gay, then that's the other disqualifier.
I don't know. Oh, you mean the Baptist?
If they're, I guess we get the policy of exclusion.
Right, that's a completely different issue, though.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Jonathan Stapley. In our next and last episode with Dr. Stapley, we'll talk a little bit about sealings, especially being born in the covenant. Is it true that those sealings last forever, despite possibly very serious sins?
Brigham Young, he's got John D. Lee, right, who participates in a mass murder, innocence. He's an adopted son of Brigham Young, not in the civil sense, but he is sealed to Brigham Young as a son with his spouse, as a daughter of Brigham Young. And so Brigham Young has to wrestle with this. Well, is this a persevering relationship? And faced with that reality, he says, no. You guys have to, he gets up and he's like, oh, you people that are sealed to me, you can't get on my coattails, you have to do your work, right? But on the one hand, but on the other hand, he's saying, my kids are totally in. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you like our page on facebook.com/gospeltangents. You can subscribe at youtube.com/gospeltangents. We're also on Twitter @gospeltangents, as well as make sure that you subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss any of our episodes. Thanks again for listening. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here you'll see some more of our videos. Thanks again.